And we're live. Welcome to the instant match reaction. And I'm joined by Locks from Blue Tinted Glasses. I've got mine on here. But to be honest with you, Locks, I think after that performance, might have to take them off. Actually, do you know what? I'm actually not that despondent. I've got a feeling a lot of people in the comments will be. But I say what, over to you. Locks, good to see you. But how are you feeling after that game?
Oh God, where do I start, mate? I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about not being too down about it. I think Fulham are a good team. They've added well this summer as well. I mean, you see the quality from Emil Smith Rowe. We would have, a player like Emil Smith Rowe, we would do anything for right now. They obviously put up a really good fight against Man United last week as well, so they're clearly a good side. Yeah, I mean, we've got a tough run. Tottenham, Fulham, Villa, Palace, Everton, and Arsenal, the opening games, it's really tough. And, if you asked me last week before the Tottenham game, after the first 6 games, will you come out with 1 point? I'd probably have taken it. 1 point with those fixtures.
So we're doing well.
Well, yeah, but I think there's still. I think it was definitely more disappointing than the Spurs game, and but I'm trying to decide whether that's just because we drew against Spurs, but we lost against Fulham. Is it just because of that? But I do think in the actual game we didn't look as good going forward as we did in the second half against Fulham. I think we struggled, and don't get me started on. I'm not sure on Steve Cooper's substitutions, mate. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll come to that. There's a lot to talk about this one. I think I generally share your sentiment. I don't think it was awful, but I think Fulham very clearly deserved to win the game. I think my most disappointed aspect is I thought that the second goal, they actually countered us on transition. So it was a very simple goal for them to get. But you know what? Let's walk through some of the game and we can talk about some of the key moments.
Both, weren't they? Both goals were transition, weren't they?
Yeah.
I swear. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Although I felt that maybe the first one they kind of forced the transition, whereas the second one we were in. But I mean, that's Premier League. Sean Dyche will tell you, and he's not having a good time at the moment, that you get killed in transition. But yeah, let's just go through some of the stats. So it's ended 2-1 to Fulham. As you can see here, the XG on the right hand side. They made a lot more chances, and to be honest with you, we were probably lucky to get our 1 goal, which is probably fair. In the end, the possession was more even than it might have looked, but I've got a feeling that's because the last 10 minutes we actually started to get the ball because they were just defending the lead. We didn't really challenge the goal. So I think, to be honest with you, the TLDR is that was a pretty comprehensive win for Fulham. Although 2-1, probably about the right scoreline, but I would definitely have fancied the point. Love the point, but I mean, if we'd have got one, I don't think we'd have deserved it. It's just to be totally honest with you. Going through some of the match ratings, I think it puts a lot more precedent on some of the things that you were talking about. So looking at our team, I think there's quite a few things to kind of speak about here. I would say Bobby Reid. I mean, do you want to talk about him?
Well, Bobby Reid, mate. I mean, I said it earlier on. I think Cooper's decision to go for him and as well Justin is tactical reasons. I think Declan over Reid offers a bit more balance than maybe Mavididi does. I think he's probably more likely to track back than Mavididi is. I think Mavididi sometimes can get, if Mavididi's got the ball high up the pitch and he gets tackled, or if he tries something it doesn't really work, I think he's likely to get, if he's on the floor, maybe it takes him a few extra seconds to get back up. Just stuff like that. It's very small, but and as well as that, to add on to that, I think maybe Cooper fancied him in his first game against his club, his old club. Maybe he could do some, and he had that shot as well. Our first shot on target, I believe, from 40 yards out or whatever it was. I do like the player. I have always liked the player. He's versatile. He's experienced. I understand why Cooper puts his faith in him 100%. And I still think we are yet to see the best of him. But, in certain situations when he received the ball, I thought, I wish that was Mavididi there. I wish it was Mavididi who had received it, because I can't remember the exact moment when it was in the game, but I remember him receiving the ball out wide left and he just didn't really want to take his man on, whereas Mavididi would have tried something there, maybe even if it was just cutting inside and trying to bend one in the top right. And we didn't really see it from him. So I like him, but I think that's 2 games now where he's been average at best. So again, it caused a bit of a tactical issue maybe for Cooper, but Mavididi I think now does deserve a start because I think he was bright when he came on. Mavididi, he was bright.
I love having you on, Locks, because I don't need to say anything. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Listen, I think, yeah, I agree. I'm quite disappointed with Reed just because I thought like a Premier League experienced player who was involved quite heavily in the sort of first team, or at least coming on for Fulham, might make a bigger impact. And I think he's had two fairly poor performances in a row. Lenny in the comments has put here, regardless of the Cordova Reed having been a bit shite, I don't quite understand his role. VK was repeatedly stuck with nowhere to go. And I sort of see is what he's coming at there, because he had that shot was actually really good. It was on target and that was a decent move. But a number of times in the game, he did receive the ball. I remember one point we were trying to play out from the back. It went into Reed and he just lost the ball immediately. And I think we struggled with that the entire game. And that's something that has disappointed me about him. I think, to be fair, you mentioned his defensive work. He absolutely did do that. I noticed that a few times in the first half, he doubled back with Christensen and Traore, because Traore is a man mountain. I think he still did get the better of that encounter, but he did his work there. But I feel that, like, I mentioned this in the first game against Spurs as well, that like going forwards, having those two on the left, it just doesn't seem to be like a very profitable outlet for us. Whereas Fatawu, Fatawu, bless him, he's a bit mad, isn't he? But he will do something, and he had like a decent effort, and I feel like something could happen with him. Whereas, yeah, I'm not going to like jump on anyone's back, but I would change him, I think, for this particular game, I would say, for the next match anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the Fatawu one is interesting. Yeah, I mean, he's just so raw. I said it all pre-season, you know, that, and I remember speaking to some Spurs fans before that game, and I was saying how raw he is. And did you see the 2-footed challenge on the ball? And I was like, oh my god, you know,
he doesn't like that football, does he, Locks? That's all I can say.
Well, at least he hit the ball this time and not his man like he did against Coventry last season. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, that's clearly just a product of how raw he is. And, you know, would you rather someone like that in your team, or would you rather someone who didn't bother going for the ball? I'd rather him, you know. So yeah, you know, it is what it is. I think, you know, he's got some learning to do. He needs to snap that out of his game for sure. But I think once again, mate, I mean, I know we spoke off camera a few days ago, but like, I feel like Fatawu again grew into the game. I think he really struggled in the first half against Spurs with Udogie, and I think he was learning in real time about how to deal with a top left back. And I think it was the same today. I mean, and Anthony Robinson isn't a star name, but he's a very good left back. He's very good. And I think it was the same today. I think he was learning on the job, you know. I think that's what it was. And he looked better towards the end of the game, for sure.
I agree. And he beat him a few times on the one-on-one. So I think, look, as the ratings say here, I think Abdul overall, like, he was the least of our problems. I think he was fairly solid. What I will say, and if you look at these stats, for me, this game actually, it came down to this. And it's this gentleman here, Mr. Harry Winks. And it's not his fault, but I think this is what Fulham did. And this is why I think we really struggled in the game. So what they did, I noticed, is when we were building from the back, they actually put 2 men on Harry Winks, and they actually left Wilfred and Ndidi free.
Yeah.
And so what they're saying, go on then, Leicester. We know that Winks is your builder, so we dare you to play it to him, because you're not going to play it to Ndidi. And they wouldn't. And so he basically couldn't get in the game at all, couldn't make things happen. And Ndidi, I think Ndidi was actually okay in the game, but definitely when he receives the ball in that position, everyone will press him. I mentioned this in the post-match analysis against Spurs, and he would lose the ball a bit. He's much better higher up when he can win it. And what I will say is that when he came on a little bit later, I was actually pretty impressed with one of our new boys, which was Skip, because I felt that when he came on, actually what happened for the first time in the game is all of a sudden we could build from the back and we could start connecting the dots. And I've got a feeling that'll be the change. But yeah, just kind of coming back to it, I guess that's the TLDR. And I think you've got to give Marco Silva a lot of credit. He's a good coach. And I've got to say that in the game as well, what I thought is that, like, overall, Fulham didn't have any superstars, maybe Smith Rowe, but they all played well. And that's the sign of like a good coach, well drilled, just cohesive. And you can see why they were a solid team that never looked in trouble of getting relegated last season. They were just good. Wouldn't say they were brilliant, but they were good. Against Man United, they were good. So I have to give sometimes teams their flowers when they deserve it. And I think that for me is the key learning in this game, is that, like, going back to front, we just really struggle. It's been mentioned several times in the comments here that, like, you know, we need reinforcements going still, you know, too easy to burst through, not connecting the passes, just not making things happen. But when Skip came in, it looks a lot better. We could have maybe gone Ricardo, skipping, I guess, for the physicality and passing, but that is the big struggle. But What do you think? Because I was just giving you a mouthful there.
Well, I mean, I've been trying to defend Oliver Skip all week. I mean, from certain people, and again, I'll say it what I've said all week. I think he's the middle ground between Harry Winks and Wilfred Ndidi. He's like an old school ball winner, but he's comfortable on the ball. He can distribute the ball quickly. He's comfortable, and I think that is Wilfred Ndidi's biggest problem, biggest concern is that when he gets the ball and he's pressed, he panics and he lashes at it. And I keep using this example. You remember the Villa game, the year we went down, when we had the two assistant managers as our manager before we hired Smith. I think it was 1-1 or 0-0. I can't remember which of the two it was. And it was later on in the game, and the ball came to Ndidi, and he just panicked, and he tried to lash it, and it just went to Bertrand Traore, and he bent it in the top corner. So, yeah, I just think that's the downside to Wilf's game. I agree with you though about how, maybe Enzo did. We all joked and. Fair play to Wilf, because when Enzo played him as that advanced 8 last year, he did well. Enzo did try and replace him with Fabio Carvalho and Sensi mid-season, but I think Wilf was one of our best players last season, and maybe that is now something Cooper needs to look at as to maybe Wilf is that impact player to come on later in the game to play higher up the pitch. Because for me, it's a no-brainer. For me, it has to be Winks and Skip in the next game. For 100%.
I think at 20 million, I think it's pretty safe to say that that's going to be what happens. Now, what I mentioned here, and Sean's put some really good comments here, I think we've got to talk about two people individual. One person that started and one person that maybe could have started instead of him. So I'm a really big fan of James Justin. I think he's really good. But if I'm being brutally honest, I think he may well have been at fault for both the goals. Certainly that second one, he's pushed up. We've been caught on a transition. Winks is running back as best he can to try and get back, but he's not fast enough. And, that's one of those goals that if that was the Championship last season, we would have got away with that. But in the Premier League, it's like one small error like that and you concede, because it wasn't even a brilliant opportunity that they made, but fair play for running the power. And I think on the first goal as well, it looked like Justin was anticipating a pass to Iwobi, but it didn't go to him. And then Smith Rowe basically gets like a free run at it and kind of put it in. So I don't think it was his best game, Justin, although I think he was very good against Spurs. And I mean, someone's mentioned here, what does Ricardo have to do to get an appearance? Now, I still think given last year in that inverted role, he was brilliant, but I don't think he's going to play that inverted role now that we've signed Oliver Skip. So he could maybe play as a right back. Maybe I'm kind of jumping a little bit too far to conclusions, but what did you make of James Justin's game today?
Yeah, I mean, in the Spurs game, I was impressed. I've been saying all week, I think tactically it was because he can slot into that right centre-back position maybe more comfortably than Ricardo can. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, that the second goal, especially today, it was all on JJ. I saw someone trying to blame Winks for it, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Just because he was too slow, you know what I mean? And same with Vestergaard. People are saying it's Vestergaard's fault just because he was outpaced. And you can't blame the goal on him just because he wasn't as quick as Iwobi. So it was all JJ, that goal for me. Yeah, he pushed up when he didn't need to. He got caught out, and yeah, we just got carved open. I don't think Cooper will be happy with that whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, maybe that is the moment that kind of gets Cooper to put some trust in Ricardo. Because there's been a lot of talk this week on many different channels and podcasts about Ricardo, that even if he isn't as good at right centre back as JJ, you can't lose the quality that he has. You can't sacrifice that quality. And I mean, I'm inclined to agree. Despite the positives that he had in the Spurs game, especially, I just think you lose so much when you don't have Ricardo. I really do. And I've seen people saying, "Oh, play Ricardo in midfield." I don't know about that either. I think Skip and Winks are probably the better option. So, yeah, I think JJ. I think he's always been like this. He has his moments, and he has his calamities, but Ricardo has to feature as well in the next game. I would agree with you on that.
Interesting. Diego's put here is he's saying that Ricky may not have been match fit. Well, maybe he should have been played a bit more in pre-season, Steve Cooper, to fix that. But I agree with you, Lux. And I think, to be fair, what Cooper did try in one of the pre-season games is that instead of having Christensen as the player who supports the attack as the auxiliary winger, he tried Ricardo instead. But the issue then is then Fatawu moved inside as a number 10, and he really didn't look too good at that. He's the one that's better being like the one-on-one trying to take your man on. So it's sort of like square pegs, round holes, or the other way around, you know what I'm talking about here, and trying to make them fit. But yeah, because I think the issue is, to be fair, like we did struggle down the left, but is that Victor Christensen, or is that the fact that you've got Bobby Reed and Victor Christensen, which I think is more likely? Because again, sort of talking as the game progressed, you know, what happened is we saw a few other people come on, right? So we had this man come on, and awful free kick aside, I don't think he was sort of too bad. And then Mavididi also appeared. No worries.
Sorry.
Locks was so outraged of me bringing up the GOAT that is Jordan Ayew that he had to churn. But yeah, as the game went on, I think we brought Mavididi on an Ayew, and what actually happened is we were on Ayew instead of Vardy, and he put Mavididi on the left, and I actually think we looked better. And this guy had an awful free kick, but other than the awful free kick, I actually think he, as the defensive forward we call him, but he got us up the pitch and won us the ball quite a few times. It wasn't awful from him. What did you make of some of those subs and trying to get back into the game?
Well, with regards to why, I mean, I've just seen a stat post, well, a few stats posted here. I mean, so obviously 27 minutes, 5 out of 6 successful passes, 3 out of 3 ground duels won, 2 times fouled, 1 successful dribble, 1 accurate cross, 1 shot attempted, and 1 chance created. So, I mean, you just look at that alone on his debut, he's probably had 2 training sessions with us. I think it's positive. I don't think any of us are going to say he should start games, but it's positive knowing that we've got someone now to come off the bench and actually make an impact. Because for me, he did well against Spurs. I get it, but McAteer is, not. I don't want to have to just rely on him to come on and create something. Ayew, yet again, a kind of a defensive forward, pressing stats, all of this. He can win the ball up high up the pitch, and there's positives. This is what I'm trying to say. Like it's so hard because naturally you just want to be down in the dumps after a loss, but we've got to kind of remember where we are now. We're not in a good place, and the fact that we're coming out of games against Tottenham and Fulham with positives is only a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Simon's put here, what do you think the tactical plan was in the second half? It looked like some attempts at Enzo ball, try to build up, but no clear plans on how to advance the ball. And that's what we alluded to. I felt when Skip came on, we were a bit better at that. I will say, to kind of play devil's advocate here, though, the one thing I felt is that in the second half, I felt we dealt with Fulham's rotations a lot better. So, what was a big feature of this game is that this is kind of how Fulham play, right? They make these triangles, and this is how someone gets in. And they would make those chances pretty frequently using either Adama Traore or Iwobi to do that. And I think in the first half, we were a little bit bamboozled. Like I saw Christensen quite a few times completely follow Traore from one side of the pitch to the other. In the second half, I felt like we were a bit better structurally on that, and they weren't doing so well. And whilst I don't think we were brilliant, I don't think necessarily they were. And it felt a little bit like both teams were running out of steam. And then unfortunately, they scored on the transition. And I was like, oh, God. But I will say, as soon as they scored, I just thought, okay, it's game over. I couldn't really, barring a miracle, especially given that our only goal came from a corner. But yeah, to kind of agree with you there, Simon. So, or I guess what you're kind of alluding to is what was the plan? And I think we were trying to build from the back and do the sort of similar moves. And at times we did. I mean, just before we conceded the goal, Jamie Vardy received the ball twice in kind of the deep 9 position. And he looked to kind of play it through, but he didn't. He made the wrong decision. There was like one time where he tried to play it to Fatawu, another time where he tried to play it to Buonanotte. What I will say is a lot of these players are getting more familiar with each other's games. And I think on another day, the Fatawu one in particular, we maybe could have got in and scored. So that was maybe a bit unfortunate. But what I'll say is this: I think I can understand the plan. I just think the execution of the plan today was quite off. And you just mentioned it there yourself, Fox. Why is that? Is because we've just gone up a level, a big level, right? So now you're playing against teams, and that even half a mistake that you make, they will score from, and you've got to be even better. And you won't necessarily be able to sustain the attack for longer. I think maybe the more disappointing thing is we played a team that finished 13th in the league last season. To be fair, maybe they were on the beach for the last 5 to 10 games when they knew that they were safe. But I guess seeing that gap in quality is a little bit alarming. But that is going to be true for Ipswich, who got battered today. Is going to be true of Southampton. Maybe it's even going to be true of Everton, who at the moment look like the team that might drop into the mix with us. But given this season that we're going to suffer the points deductions, are we a team that can get, because we forget 40 points, Logs, we're probably going to need 50. And that's the challenge there. But yeah, over to you.
That's the scary bit, needing 50. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's the counter attacks, especially the transitions. It's a worry. I mean, you've got to think we conceded quite a few of them last season, in the championship. And this is why football management and football in general is hard, because the 2 times that we got caught out was probably the times we tried to take the game to them a little bit more, and we got caught out. And we've got to find a middle ground between that, because for me, how we set up in the first half against Tottenham, how we set up probably, you could say, in large parts of today's game, it's not sustainable. For me, I think we need to. I know it's hard to say go out there and try and gain a bit of possession. It's not about that. It's not about the for how long you've got the possession for. It's more about what you do with it. How, do you make it count? And we've been really bad, in my opinion, on actually doing anything useful with the ball while we had it. So we saw positive signs again in the Tottenham game, where we were able to kind of have a nice sequence and link up play. And there were times today, of course, as well, but we're just not doing enough. And reinforcements will only help this. Bringing in, I know Facundo Buonannote's been really good so far, but we're now looking at another 10 to come in and maybe share the minutes with him. Maybe Facundo might move out wide. You just never, and we have another 10 starting. But I think Jamie Vardy, for me, this sounds crazy because obviously we were all raving about him 5 days ago. Jamie Vardy, for me, I think needs to be an impact substitute. I think we need a striker desperately. We need a striker who can start games, who's capable of scoring goals. That isn't Ayew for me. Ayew's a different profile, but a Fotis, Ian Addis, or someone like that. The Santi Jimenez one's a bit crazy. We ain't going to get him, but it's just someone who we can rely on as a number 9 to start games, because I don't think Vardy is it now, and I think he has to be the impact.
Locks, it's going to be David Datro Fofana, and you're going to accept it and you're going to enjoy it. That's my prediction for that one. But I very much agree. And I think, look, to be fair, I think Vardy even would have been comfortable with that. And I think he would have known that. And he did say after the match that he declared himself fit because he knew if Patson out for 3.5 to 4 months, that Leicester need to start strong, and that he just felt that I need to come in and do a job, even if I only play half the game. So absolutely, that's going to get for that. We can talk about that in a moment. Just one thing I want to kind of quickly add, though, that I think also compounded to our problems today. So we've got the team setups here, but actually what ended up happening pretty early on, you can see that Andreas Pereira got man of the match, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I think he ran the show. But I think the reason why he ran the show is he actually didn't play here. Quite early on, he actually stepped up to give them an extra man, which made it harder. So he was the one that was working in tandem with Smith Rowe to press wings, and then he was receiving the ball a little more. And that's quite similar to what we did against teams last season. So what we used to do against some teams is they would sit back. So Enzo would push Ricardo up again. So it would just be Winks sitting there to make 6 on 5 up there. And so, again, I want to give Marco Silva a lot of respect. He's like, Diego put it here as well, but I think he very clearly looked at our game on Monday and thought, okay, this is what we can do. This is how we can get at them, and this is how we can cause issues. And it did cause us issues, and I think Fulham very much deserved their win. And I think, speaking about Jamie Vardy, I don't think he had necessarily a terrible game. He didn't really receive much service. I think the few times he did get the ball, maybe he could have done a bit better. We certainly need someone else in there. You mentioned Jordan Ayew. Yeah, he's not a striker either. And I think if we don't have someone that's kind of capable of getting us 10 to 15 goals as a Premier League striker, we're going to be in big trouble this season. And that's going to cause us issues. But that's just how it is. So let me go through the story of the game a little bit. Just to give you like a full recap. So this was our starting lineup. It was actually the same lineup as we went for last game. Maybe not so much a surprise, given that we ended strongly. I thought perhaps we might see Bobby Reid come out of the team with someone else coming in. But what was interesting is that on the bench, Skip was on the bench. I think we all expected that. But Jordan Ayew, who obviously came into the game as well, also came in. And given that he only signed on Friday, that was maybe a little bit of a surprise. Fulham, they made 2 signings themselves. They signed Sander Berge and Joachim Andersen return. But neither of those 2 actually came into the team. And in fact, they just completely sat out. So that's kind of terrifying how we got beat pretty comfortably by Fulham. And you had £55 million worth of talent that weren't even playing in that game that probably will feature against us next time round. Timothy Castagna obviously used to play for us. He didn't even make the team. He played on the bench, again, kind of showing us the strength of Premier League teams. Otherwise, it was the same lineup that they played against Manchester United, where they were a bit unlucky not to get something. Although I will say, currently we're not, maybe we played better than Man United against Fulham, which is maybe some kind of things to kind of cling to. Going through the players, Mads Hermansen, I think he had a pretty solid game. He made quite a few important saves. Could he have done better with the goals? In my opinion, not so much. I think he was very solid. Maybe the distribution could have been better at times, but I think even then it was fairly okay. And I think he overall had a solid game, and he continues to show that he's been a great signing for the club for the price paid. Will almost certainly go for big money in the future. Very consistent and solid performer for the team. Christensen, spoken about him quite a few times already. He might have been lucky to have stayed on the pitch by the end of it. He had a tough time against Traore. I don't think he got dominated, but he definitely struggled. I mean, that said, playing against someone who's built like that is always going to be a problem. He was helped out by Bobby Reid at times, but he picked up a booking. He then made another foul that I suppose could also have been a yellow. So then he was replaced. Casey McAteer came on for him towards the end when we were just pushing up and trying to get something. So maybe an indifferent game for Christensen in this one. That's always going to be a tough challenge. I think his attacking output, he tried to make some things happen. He had a very good cross of his left foot in the first half, but he didn't really get into the game enough. And for me, that's maybe one objection I have to Steve Cooper's system, is that in playing this way, do really have the players to really pose enough attacking threat. And, well, we scored 2 goals in 2 games. One's off a corner, though. So the jury's still out on that one. Fass, well, actually scored a good goal from the corner. God, I hate having VAR. That was one of the few nice things about the Championship, wasn't it? Seeing, just the goal going in and being able to celebrate it, as soon as it went in. Eventually it was given, and thank God it was, because that would have been absolutely outrageous had that been ruled out. Overall, he was pretty solid. He also helped out defensively against some. I don't think he made too many errors. As I say, I think it was probably James Justin that was at fault of both of the goals. A decent headed goal. Our new set pieces coach, I think we'll actually touch on him a little bit later, but I think that has had an impact on the team. Vestergaard, I think he had a bit of a dodgy game in this one, if I'm being honest. I think in the first half, he gave the ball away a little bit too often for someone that was trying to build. He wasn't as careful on the ball as he was against Spurs. He also got booked towards the end, but by that point in time, it was already game over. I don't think that's too much of a problem. Wouldn't say he was the biggest of our issues, but again, look, one of the goals we've been caught out on transition and having a slow centre half like Yannick, whilst it wasn't his fault that the ball was given away, it's going to be one of those that he's not going to get back to make the challenge, and you always, going to be at fault possibly for that. And over the course of the season, we're going to need to have a look at how much that impacts us going forward. Coming on to Justin, mixed bag. I think he did well other for the 2 goals, but in those 2 goals, he was clearly at fault. And so 2 individual mistakes, would you say, have cost the team. So not his best day. Other than that, he did generally do okay. He was dealing with Adama Traore a lot better than, let's say, Christensen on... he was up against Alex Iwobi, so he's doing better than Christensen on Traore. But at the end of the day, the key mistake that's given Fulham the win. Bobby Reid, who spoke about already, I think he was our worst performer. Got nothing against him as a person or a player, but I would far rather see Mavididi start. I think Mavididi was held back because he was going to come on for Vardy, but in the end, we put Ayew up front. So I'm not sure, really. I don't think he's really added to the team this season. Harry Winks. Winks, I think, had a challenging game. I don't think it was his fault. I think he, as mentioned from the tactical setup, Andreas Pereira pushed up with Emile Smith-Rowe to block his passing lanes. They were trying to entice us to pass to Ndidi instead of Winks. So therefore, blocking out our most influential player on the ball, who's going to be building the attacks for us, it's going to mean he doesn't get on the ball, so he can't have nearly as good an effect. And he struggled, and that's not really his fault. That's a kind of systematic problem. I think Skip coming into the team in the second half really helped him out. All of a sudden, Skip could start progressing the ball, and Winks started looking better as a result of it. So not a surprise there necessarily. I will say I did see Winks give the ball away, though, once or twice. So not his best performance for me. Ndidi, I thought he was okay. We did mention how he, at times, got caught on the ball when trying to build from the back, but I still think that overall he won a lot of challenges in the game. He won a lot of headers, pushing up high towards the end. He was doing well. His physicality was there, but while he individually might have played well, does it affect the team by having him next to Harry Winks? I think the answer is yes. I think that's why we signed Skip, and that's going to be the change that we make going forward. Abdul Fatawu, think he was decent overall. He is a bit mad, isn't he? Trying to 2-foot the ball to put it out for a corner, going for an audacious shot from about 60 yards out that never had a hope in hell of going in. Probably what you'd expect from a young kid. Maybe we need to rein him in a little bit. But he had some nice moments where he beat his man. In the second half, he almost cut in and scored a wonderful goal. That was a closer opportunity than we thought. So I think he was solid, and I think he shows that he can play at this level. But he's a young player. He's going to need a bit of time before he's as effective in the Premier League as he was in the Championship. I still think the initial signs that we've seen are quite promising, though. Facundo Buonanotte, I think he started the game very strongly, but did fade away as it went on. What's impressed me about Buonanotte is that for someone who's so young, he's also 19, is he has a lot of physical strength. So quite often the ball would get played into him and he was surrounded by other players who were trying to bully him off the ball, but he managed to keep the ball, managed to turn with it and managed to make something happen. And if I compare him to Bobby Reid, I think with Bobby Reid, the move broke down with him quite a few times other than the one shooting opportunity he made. Though with Buonanotte, certainly in the first half, he was able to keep it going. I do think though that as the game progressed, he struggled a bit. Maybe he's not quite match fit. We have been linked possibly with another player to play that position. And I think that's the reason why. Locks mentioned just before he disappeared that the two of them could rotate and share minutes. And I think that would be a sensible way going forward. But I have to say, over both games, I've been extremely impressed by this player. Yeah, I can see why Brighton didn't allow us to have the option to buy him. I can see a very bright future for him. How far he'll go, I don't know, but very solid for his age. Jamie Vardy, we've mentioned, not the best day at the office. First half was one of those games where he probably had 3 touches at maximum. Second half, he did get the ball a few times, but didn't make the most of it. Think that's a potential issue. Look, 2 games in a week for him. I think if we had more rotations, we would have put more people on. Tom Cannon, I mean, why have we not sent him out on loan already? Maybe he'll play in the cup, but clearly he's not got a future here. We're looking for another striker. I'm sure one will come in. It might not be the one that we want or the one that we're hoping for, which I guess is Fotis Ioannidis from Panathinaikos, although will he make it in the Premier League? I don't even know. He looks very good, I've got to say, but it is quite a different league to play in. But look, I still got massive respect for Vardy. He's still one of the players that we know knows how to finish at this level, and he can certainly have an impact. But it is, I think, the biggest concern in the team right now. Speaking about some of the subs that made an appearance, so Jordan Ayew came on, much maligned for the big money that we've paid for a guy in his 30s. I think he was okay generally. He won quite a few free kicks. He got us up the pitch, did something with the ball. The only bad thing is we had a free kick. He demanded to take it, and it wasn't too good. Oliver Skipp, he made his debut. He was very impressive, I felt. When he came on, he interchanged very well with Harry Winks. I think he had a better game than Winks for the brief time that he was on. Composed on the ball, able to run round challenges and deal with the physicality and got us going forwards. I'm looking forward to seeing him play going forwards. I think him and Winks could make a good combination. And if we're going to stay up this season, I dare say that is probably going to be the partnership that, makes or breaks us. Just coming to the comments, Reed starting in 2 times games is giving me Peter Taylor vibes. Yeah, I hope you're not referencing Junior Lewis, probably the worst signing that we've ever made in our history, and playing players that just aren't good enough when we've got better players that we could play instead. And I just want to say that I absolutely would start Mavadidi, or to be honest with you, even Jordan Ayew in front of Bobby Reid from what I've seen so far. And I think I'm a bit puzzled as to why he's come into the team so far. Maybe he's better in training, but I don't think it's helped the team so far. Yeah, speaking of Mavadidi, I actually think he looked quite good when he came on. You could already see the difference that he made. And therefore, I wish he started, to be honest with you. I thought he might come on and play up front, but actually he did get put on the left. We brought on Ayew initially to put on the left-hand side instead of Bobby Reid. And then when Vardy came off, we swapped that around. Yeah, I would like to see him start. It was proven last year. You've got to wonder what Steve Cooper's beef is with him, to be honest. Ricardo didn't play, but maybe could. Hamza, neither Booba. Casey McAteer did come on in the end, but not really long enough to really have an impact. I want Tommy Cannon to get a chance. Yeah, I kind of agree. Don't really know too much about him. Look, I suspect he will play in the cup. Who knows? Maybe if he scores a goal or two, he could get there. He might also be feeling a bit downtrodden, though, mustn't he? That or downbeat that Patson Daka has been injured and the manager is still not giving him a chance. He's playing literally anyone else other than him up front when he's a striker. So I'll be honest with you, we might want him to get a chance, but I don't see it happening. And I think he's got the invariable loan to a championship team written all over him. I still think that signing's been made for in case we go down again to the Championship and we have to make sales, that we've got a player that's proven at that level that can score goals. And you know what? I think with that, I will wrap up the instant match reaction. Disappointing to lose the game after the good performance last time round. I think we've got to be fair, though, and say that well played Fulham. They absolutely deserved that result. And look, onwards and upwards to the next game. Let's see what we can do. I will do a full tactical analysis on this game a little bit later in the week. Otherwise, thank you for watching and see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.